And boom, welcome everybody to another episode of the Ganas podcast. My name is Alexender, your host, and today I'm joined by Dominique. Dominique, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
So we were just talking like off air, and honestly, this is our first discussion. So where are you from? Because you mentioned moving to Austin. So
Yeah. So I'm originally from Sacramento. I grew up in Sacramento, California, but over the last 10 years, I've lived in Spain and Mexico. So off and on.
you've lived out there?
Yeah. So I lived in Barcelona for a year, Madrid for another year or so, and then Mexico City for 2 years. So a good chunk of my adult life over the last 10 years has been abroad.
That's so cool. I have so many questions for you too. Is that sort of because I know that you essentially learned how to speak Spanish at a later point, right? So it wasn't necessarily like ingrained in your mind from the onset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm Puerto Rican. I'm part Puerto Rican and Italian. My grandfather was from Puerto Rico, but he didn't grow up speaking Spanish to my mother or her sisters. And when I was 21, I started salsa dancing.
Mm.
I found it a passion of mine, started dancing and got really hooked on it. You can say that it was in my sangre, in my blood, you
Yeah.
know. And I found myself a couple years into dancing salsa where I was singing all the music. I just loved the music so much. I memorized the lyrics, but I didn't know what I was singing. And
Mm.
I was at that point, I was normal like everyone. You take a few years in high school. I took it in Spanish in college, and still I just didn't understand anything. And when I was 23, I got out of a relationship with a Mexican guy, and I was really motivated to learn Spanish, and for various reasons, for salsa, and also because I felt excluded from his family events and things like that. I've never felt so excluded before because
Such
of
a weird
language.
feeling.
Exactly. And so I kind of I wanted to go somewhere for a year, learn Spanish and come back fluent. So that was my goal. And so I found a host family and in Barcelona. And within 3 months, I had sold everything I owned. Sold my car, paid off all my credit cards and then with $2,000, I just hopped on a
We
one-way
we
ticket.
we love financial responsibility over here.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So I hopped on with a one-way ticket to Barcelona to go live with a family I had never met, and lived with them for a year and took very intensive Spanish courses in Barcelona.
So let me see if I have this right. You're out there, you're submerged into the culture. So you're already having to kind of adapt and speak it, but you're also taking courses at the same time.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I was really serious about it.
Yeah.
And I was taking like 4 hours of Spanish every day for an entire year.
What's that look like? Yeah, what
Mm-hmm.
does that look like? How much of that is, application based versus writing or versus reading? And then if you could answer to when you mentioned like everyone else, you take 2 or 3 years in Spanish in high school and then you take a couple in college, but it never sticks for some reason. What adjustments would you make to curriculum to kind of curve that and allow people to learn more?
Yeah, that's it. That's a great question. So back to what Spanish looked like for me in Barcelona. In Europe, they have language schools, right? So there was a Spanish language school. In my classroom, I had a grammar course, a speaking course, or class, I should say, and one right after the other. That kind of combined all the skills at once, and there was different levels I would work up through. And my classroom was full of people from all over the world, so
Wow.
Germans and Chinese and French people, and my best friend from Barcelona ended up being Turkish. So I was, for the first time in my life, as a monolingual uh, American English speaker, I was in a room full of all sorts of languages but we were all learning Spanish together. So just that type of immersion was kind of shocking at first. But back to your question about high school. So high school and college Spanish, the problem with how we teach it in high school and college is that we try to throw too much at once at
Mm.
people. We're expected to memorize all these tenses and then regurgitate them on a test. And so we memorize things and then we take our test and we pass the test and then we forget it because we haven't internalized anything. We haven't retained anything. And that's not the way to learn a language. You can't learn a language that way.
It's kind of just like memory dumping, right? Like you learn it, you pass the test, and then you move on to the next thing and repeat that.
That's right. That's right. And that also has nothing to do with connecting Spanish to your life, right? It's just book work, take a test, regurgitate this information, memorize conjugations. So there's no connection to the culture and to living in the language.
That's interesting. And so also, do you drink coffee, by the way?
I sure do.
Because I'm like finishing mine and I'm like wired right now. Like I'm just like
I'm working on my like anxious tendencies. So I did yoga this morning up at the botanical gardens.
How was that?
It really calmed me, and I'm feeling very centered right now for this interview.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have sort of like a blend of that. So I just lifted as well. Like I got home and showered and all that. So I feel that euphoric feeling of lifting and working out, but I'm also wired. So it's this weird like middle ground.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's so interesting. And when I was in high school, I took French. Like, I don't know why I took French, great. Like I know like 7 words from there now, but I should have taken Spanish. And then I go on into college and I take Spanish. And that's where one of my, my professors, she like really inspired me to go out and learn more. So it was interesting. And so, I saw my grandma, like this is kind of like bouncing all over, but in 2012, I saw my grandma. And then last year I saw her for the first time since 2012. And it was interesting being back last year and speaking Spanish to her, whereas when I was younger, I couldn't. And so like, it was almost like I was connecting with the same person in a completely different way. And
I had the same experience.
It was that not like profound for you? Because for me, it was like, what am I doing? Like, this feels so like freeing almost. And like, you just vibe and connect a lot more. So yeah, just a small anecdote.
Yeah, so my grandfather, he passed away in 2016, but I was living in Spain in 2011 and 2012, and he and my grandmother came out to visit. They're big world travelers, and I had been studying Spanish at that point for about 8 months. And I remember sitting at a cafe in Barcelona in a beautiful plaza with my grandpa. We were drinking coffee, and I initiated the first conversation with him in Spanish.
Really?
And his eyes lit up. We carried on a conversation because I am the only third generation, well, even the second generation, I'm the only one in the family that has continued with the Latin culture to keep it alive, to keep the language alive. There's nobody on my side of the family that has stayed connected with that, with the Latin culture, with Spanish. So I think he feels very proud. I think up in heaven, he feels very proud.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Gosh, I think it's so important to like you said, sangre, like it's in the blood, like it's your culture. Like I'm so prideful in that. And so it's interesting, like not being connected to that. And do you know why that is? Like why you're the only one in your family at the moment? They kind of continue.
Yeah, I think my story is so similar to so many second and third generation Spanish speakers in the US. I mean, just the English is pushed on them from an early age. You need to learn English. You need to speak good English. So we call them heritage speakers. Heritage speakers are those who have grown up hearing Spanish, but their education level in Spanish, they don't get the same education level as they do in English. So what happens is their English shoots up to, high school, university level, while their Spanish stays at a very colloquial level where they speak it at home, or they just completely lose it, or they speak Spanglish. So they do fine in the US, but when they go visit family in Mexico, they feel so embarrassed because they can't carry on a whole Spanish conversation. So again, my story is very similar to others.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't think a lot of people realize too, but there were people that came here and then they didn't want to teach their kids Spanish because of the treatment that they would receive in schools, or bullying, or just the treatment of nowadays. It's different. Like diversity is embraced and it's welcomed. but I know a lot of people that their parents didn't teach them Spanish for the sake of like, I need to protect my kid. They need to just learn English. And then with that culture dies, though, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I think
Mhm.
that's incredibly sad.
Yeah. And then I got to, as a third generation Puerto Rican, I felt this hole in my life. I didn't even know that the hole was there until I started dancing salsa, but something drew me to that. And that kept me searching and digging and digging. And I love salsa dancing, but the
Mhm.
true thing in my heart that was missing, that the missing puzzle piece was Spanish, because Spanish is what connected all the dots together. And now I feel like I'm living my truest life. And
Yeah,
I can't imagine my life without Spanish.
that's incredible. And so I want to ask too, because I think it's pretty cool that you were just like, all right, I'm going to go to a different country and I'm going to learn this.
Mhm.
So that's like a big leap of faith. Like that takes a lot of action. Like you said, you sold everything, like you paid off your debts, and then you just moved to this literally on the other side of the world. So
Mhm.
have you always been like that? Someone that will take initiative and do these things, or what was it in that like one time that made you do that?
You know what? I don't know what drew me to go abroad. I was a year out of college at that point. I had my degree, and I was working in kind of a soul crushing corporate America job, and I was 23 and broke up with that boyfriend, and I was sitting there and I'm like, this sucks. Is this it? Is this what I worked for? At the time, I also had a friend who was an older friend, a writer friend. He was, 65, and we would sit down and have tea together. And he would talk about his travels, and he would give me his copies of the books he'd written about his
Hmm.
adventures across the world. And that also inspired me a lot to get up and go. I just felt like that's what I needed to do. And that was the journey I needed to take.
So it's kind of just being in that aftermath of like the breakup, assessing like, all right, my job is kind of soul crushing, went through a breakup, and then you're talking to this friend over tea of like his world travels and like how extravagant the world is outside of like your little bubble.
Exactly. And I'm a dreamer. I've always been a
Mm.
dreamer in a way. Also responsible too. So I felt like I had done what I needed to do. I got through college, and I was at a point in my life where I was ready to explore and follow some kind of crazy dreams, because I knew that this was the moment to do it at 23 on my own. And I, to this day, I always believe that we regret the things we don't do. We regret the
Sheesh.
things we don't do, not the choices that we do take, that we do make.
I gotta highlight that. Like that's gotta be a clip right there. Right. Like that's profound. And also too, I like that you mentioned that you were responsible with it too. Cause I feel that it might just be like our society and like social media, but far too often like the toxic positivity of like move across the world, do this, do that. And people are just telling you, but like they're not saying what the underlying is of like how you get there. They're just like extrapolating this blanket approach of like, go do this, go do that, but it's not context specific. And I don't like that. And I think that's irresponsible. So I like that you really say I was responsible too. And then I went and took care of my stuff across the world.
Exactly. And when I was in Barcelona, I was broke. I've never had so little money in my whole life. I mean, I couch surfed and backpacked, and this Turkish friend that I met, she had already lived across the world. She was my age, and she taught me how to travel light, how to
Yeah.
travel frugally, how to take in experience, not things. So that year was completely transformative, and I've carried that style of travel, of immersion, in every trip that I take. Whether I'm in Thailand or I'm in a Spanish speaking country, I'm always looking for ethical companies to travel with, to support local,
Yeah.
to bring good, not do damage to the country that I'm visiting. So,
Yeah, that's I love that you say that. I was reading an article. It was talking about how everyone's working remotely now. So people
mhm.
are going to these destination places, like people are maybe staying in Tulum for like 9 months now, but the infrastructure there is not built for that. It's built for like, all right, 2 weeks and you need to get out of here. And so it was just talking about some of the ramifications that would take place on some of these places that, people around the world love. And, just it's not built for that at the moment. So it'll be interesting to
Mhm.
see like what happens, I guess.
Yeah. And for all those who are interested, in 2022, Spain is going to be offering a nomad visa. meaning if you can prove that you have a viable company or business that pays you, you can get a visa to work as a nomad in Spain.
Really?
Which I think they're trying to get more people, more talent coming into Spain. It's a different infrastructure than like Mexico or Guatemala, places like
Yeah.
that. They really want that, people coming into the country. So I think
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of smart. 'Cause if you think like we're in a huge age of like innovation at the moment with technology, so they probably want a lot of those smart like engineers and coders to like, all right, come work here. You can work abroad.
Yeah.
Like you're in Spain, like spend money here.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Exactly. It's ingenious. So you better believe that I'm going to be looking at that visa.
I was gonna ask, are you looking to maybe go out there again?
I get tempted. Mexico and Spain are the countries that pull my heart for sure.
Really?
Particularly Mexico City really pulls my heart. If I
Yeah,
could live there, I
yeah.
would stay there forever and ever.
I've been there once. It was a really cool spot. It's just it's vibrant with energy. Like
Vibrant. Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but I was there and my heart was like palpitating the whole time in a really beautiful way. But I went to the museum. It's that one that looks like metallic on the outside. It's got the cool step.
Sumaya.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful place out there.
It is. It's just got everything you could ever want. So,
What other parts of Mexico have you looked into maybe going?
well, I've been particularly Mexico and Spain. I've been to all corners. I
Hmm.
should say in Mexico, I've been to all safe corners of Mexico.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've gone explored the Yucatan, Chiapas, Oaxaca. Chiapas, I stayed with an indigenous family for a week and
Oh
taught
wow.
English. And I've had some really kind of rugged rural experiences because I like being with the people. I want to see how they live. I want to
Yeah.
talk with them. I always travel. I don't vacation ever. If that makes sense. I
You're bringing
believe.
the highlights today. Like that
Am
is,
I?
I love that. Yeah.
I've never been. Yes, can I stop at a beach for a couple of days? Yes, but you will find me at a remote beach staying in the local side of town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The Rocky
Um,
Beach
the
or
rocky beach, and
yeah.
I'm staying in a cute little boutique hotel with 7 rooms, and there's a community kitchen, right? So that's where you will find me.
Yeah, I feel like you can experience so much more that way too, being again immersed in the culture. Um, I've never understood sort of some of the what are they called? Gosh, like in Cancun, the resorts that it looks like a fortress as you drive by it with a huge
Mhm.
gate and a wall and there's security. And it's like, I don't know how you're really seeing the place that you're coming to visit. It's almost like you just
Mhm.
want to be served and then that's it and have a view. But it's not something that I can relate to, I would say,
Me neither.
when I travel. So
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, what were you doing prior to this? Because yeah, tell people what you do too, because I think that's so cool. We haven't even
Oh
gotten.
yeah.
So sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. So I like to say I run a Spanish tutoring company, but I'm kind of working on that because I don't know if it quite describes everything that I do. I teach Spanish to adults who are interested in a lifelong love affair with Spanish, that want to incorporate it in their daily life and use it for travel, use it to connect with relatives. I offer programs and courses and to teach all the way from beginner to advanced levels. And really the way that I learned, there's no fluff. It's just, this is what you need to know to be confident and fluent in Spanish and to communicate. So the biggest thing for me is communication. It's not about knowing the most complicated grammar topics. It's
Mhm.
about being able to communicate and live in Spanish and feel the joy that it brings to your life.
I love that. That's so cool to me, and it seems novel. I don't know why what you're doing seems novel to me. I know that there's other people doing it, but you might just be doing it differently. And I liked on your website too. I was looking at what you were saying, and you mentioned, um, gosh, I'm kind of blanking right now. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned like homework, like, like, and you likened it to like personal training. And I'm in the health and wellness industry. So like
Mhm.
I'll give my clients homework and it's like, you only spend 120 minutes with me a week. So like, what are you doing the rest of the week? So you need
That's
to
right.
be looking at your sleep. You need to be looking at your water intake. And I like how you liken that to what you do. So you need to be looking at your lesson plans and putting in this extra effort, because again, like, you can't really learn and be fluent if you're just like there for that little moment. Like, you have to put in extra work outside of it too.
Mhm. That's why I like to consider myself more of a coach. I'm a language coach because I'm giving you the tools that you need to be successful, but it has to be your goal first.
Mm,
And that's why with most students, I ask them, why are you here? Why are you doing this? What's your why? Because things are going to get hard.
mm.
So I'm here to motivate you, but you also have to know your why, because this is going to take some effort. And we spend a lot of time talking about that, talking about habits. I'm currently reading actually Atomic Habits.
Are you? That's
It's
yeah.
just the first like third of this book. I'm going to be developing just a quick video series talking about habits to incorporate in my basic Spanish course, because it's so important when jumping into learning any language is to develop those daily language learning habits.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's habits. And regardless of how you feel, I gotta tell a lot of people, and depending on who they are, but you can't rely on your motivation to make change, because I may not feel good and I don't want to go work out tomorrow or the next day, but it doesn't really matter. I need to go do it because I built a habit. So I wouldn't rely on motivation. I would rely on the habits that are slowly built, but that takes time. And a lot of people, they just want the instant gratification. Um, what's your background in terms of like, yeah, what's your background? Because when you talk about coaching, it doesn't sound like you're just teaching people Spanish. I like that you're incorporating concepts of habit. It seems like there's behavior change models behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my background, I guess, since I graduated college, I've worked mostly as a language teacher. At first, I was certified in English to be an ESL teacher and got that certification. So I was teaching English to Spanish speakers for a long time. And I
Mm,
was doing that in Mexico. And then I was also doing that in Sacramento at a small language school called Casa de Español,
mm-hmm.
running their ESL program. And then I started tutoring Spanish on the side. And since I learned Spanish from the ground up as an adult, it was so fresh in my mind. And I'm such a nerd about Spanish. I find it so fascinating. I just devour everything about it. And so I was able to teach it really well, even though I didn't go through a whole training program in how to teach
Yeah.
Spanish. It just came naturally. And after I started tutoring Spanish students, it kind of turned into a little side business. And later it turned into my full-time business to what
Did
it
it
is now.
did it overtake like your ESL? Like, you were like, all right, now I'm kind of self-sustaining, and like at some point I can kind of do this all by myself.
And yes, and I preferred to teach Spanish. I was more invested emotionally in teaching Spanish. And I didn't realize it. I'm now actually realizing more how unique my experiences are, that my first language was English. I learned Spanish as an adult. And I've also lived in Spain and Mexico. So I know a
Yeah.
lot about the cultural differences and the differences in the language usage, the regionalities. And people find that really interesting. That I have like those three things: being a native English speaker, but fluent in Spanish, and having both the Latin American Spanish and the Castilian.
You are a mutant, is what you
I
are.
guess so. I guess they
No,
call
but
that a unicorn.
yeah, but that's again, like, people that have those skill sets, they typically fare well in whatever industry they're in, because they can offer different things to different audiences.
Mhm.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, at first, I really had to deal with imposter syndrome the
Mm,
first year or so, thinking I'm a fake. I'm not a native speaker. I have no business teaching this language. I do make mistakes sometimes, but over time, I just realized, that's okay. I love what I do. People seem to enjoy my teaching style. And I'm a walking example that you can learn Spanish no matter how old you are, wherever you find yourself in life. It's okay to make mistakes. So I've just embodied that
Yeah,
for my business.
you're a walking testimonial for your own business. You're like, I did
Mm-hmm.
this and so can you. And a lot of people don't realize that testimonials are extremely important, because when someone's looking at someone's results of like before and after, they see themselves in that, whether they're reading the passage or they see the progress photos. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty cool that you can offer that yourself for your clients. What would you say is your biggest takeaway from like day one teaching ESL and slowly starting to teach Spanish on the side to like where you're at now? What's maybe been the biggest growth you've had?
Biggest growth I've had.
Mhm.
I would say finally investing in a professional website was a big step, because at that point I believed in myself enough to not just be out there on Craigslist or word of mouth. Like I
Yeah.
said, this is my business. So that was a big step in the business itself. And then also starting to scale it a little bit, moving away from only one-to-one lessons, which can be very draining.
That's so
And
smart.
thinking of a way, how do I make this sustainable? How do I continue to offer my services and to help as many people as possible, but also not burn out? So
Yeah.
that's what I've been focusing on the last year. And that's when I started developing courses and things like that, because it allows me to scale a little bit, but also to bring people together to create more community and
Yeah.
support than just me working one-on-one with a student.
That's so cool. And it sounds like I'm no expert, but I've been running my own business since like March of 2020. So at some point you got to start scaling, or you figure out different ways and methods to bring in revenue while also thinking about your own boundaries and like your mentals, right? Like it's very important. So that was one of my questions. Where do you kind of see this going? Like, how do you plan to scale over time? So you mentioned courses. Could you just kind of explain what those look like for prospective people?
Yeah. So
Also, how long have you been doing this? I know you mentioned in Sacramento you kind of started, and then
I've been doing it since May of 2019,
dope. Okay, cool.
officially, and it's grown immensely
You're killing it.
quickly. It's grown very quickly.
It's a need though, and honestly, I'm not sure if COVID amplified people wanting to learn, because people were traveling more and they're staying more in these places, so they probably want to know before they go.
And they have more time, and also just COVID moving to completely online was the best thing that could have happened to my business, because before I was doing in person and then
Oh,
COVID
no.
switched me to online, and I realized it was just such a great business method, and that my students were still learning just as much as they would if we were in person.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And like,
mhm.
I don't know, I'm a homebody too, so if I'm getting to kind of do the same thing but I kind of get to stay home, like it's a win-win.
It's a win-win, yeah. But back to the courses. So the major course that I have right now, it's a beginner series, and it's called Alas. Alas means wings, and that goes with the name of the butterfly.
Hmm,
My friends gave me the nickname La Mariposa, or butterfly. When I moved to Spain that one year, my friends gave me the nickname La Mariposa, and I've always been La Mariposa, the one
that's
that flies
cute.
around the world,
Yeah.
and the one that transformed herself into something different. And so
Yeah.
that's the symbol of my business. So the beginner's course is called Alas, and it's meant to build your wings, to grow your wings in Spanish so that you can fly, so that you can use it, right? So the first course is a 6-week course. There's different modules. There's recordings of me teaching concepts, worksheets, Quizlet vocabulary sets to do on your own, tips and tricks on how to build good language learning habits and the things that I did to be successful. There's also a Facebook group community that you get access to me and my
Love
support.
that.
I also do group coaching sessions within the Facebook group. And so I'm relaunching this in January. And you can go on my website and sign up for the interest list. In January, it will be live, and you'll be able to sign up all year long.
Oh,
Once you
cool.
once you finish a las uno, there'll be an a las dos. There'll be the second part of the course, another 6 weeks, and then there'll be an a las tres, so there's going to be 3 6-week courses in my a las beginner series.
Oh, so it's like broken up into 6-week portions, but it's still the ALAS program.
It's the a las program 1, 2, and 3. And
You're killing this.
yeah, so you get a certificate at the end that you've passed a las uno, so you feel like you're accomplishing something.
Mhm.
And then if you need a break from Spanish, you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break. That's fine. And then you can come back whenever you're ready to do a las dos, or you can just move right through all three.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
What have you found is that works best for people, like running straight through it or just kind of like taking a break? And then what would you say is the difference between like 1 versus 2 versus 3? Like what are people looking at potentially?
Sure. So I just forgot your first question. I'm so sorry. I was the
What
first.
works best typically? Like people run
Sorry,
straight through
moving
it
through
or
it. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, you're
So
good.
I believe in retention. So my biggest goal for you is to retain what you're learning. It is not to fly through the content. Because sure, you can check off things in the course that you've done them, but have you retained them? So
Yeah.
again, I don't care how fast or slow you go through the content, as long as it's getting ingrained in you. So I think if you're a very motivated person, I think the best way is to go through all three and just push through, and then maybe take a break for a little bit.
Yeah.
That would be my advice, because you're kind of in this language learning mode. And in my experience, I've gone for 6 months and then I kind of need a break.
Mhm.
And that's okay. Take a break. And then we come back at it, you know?
I think that's such a great approach. And I agree with that wholeheartedly too, because again, in the health and wellness industry, there are courses or mentorships you can take. And it seems like everyone is always offering something. And so from my experience, what I found is most effective, at least for me, is like I learned something, whether it's around 3 to 4 months, and then I'll put that into action for 3 or 4 months. And then maybe I'll look around to see if I can, add another course or something. But I'm all about like taking the theory and applying it, as opposed to always collecting courses, because at the end of the day, you're never spending time applying what you're learning.
That's right. That's right. So, and I encourage people who work with me, I will tell them straight up, you need to take a break from the books and you need to go to Mexico, or you need to go somewhere and just live in the language for a little bit. Go enjoy it a little bit. Find your joy again and come back.
Yeah.
Because some people get burnt out. And I also do believe in grammar. I believe in structure. I think it gives you the tools to succeed in the language. If some people come to me saying, oh, I just want conversational Spanish, I don't want grammar, I don't want any of that other stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to teach you to be a talking parrot. I'm going to teach you to communicate in the language, which means you need structure. So if you don't want to take the time to learn any grammar concepts, then maybe I'm not the right teacher for you. Or you should use an app like Duolingo and go learn some phrases, or go get a phrase book or a travel Spanish book.
Yeah.
I don't do travel Spanish. The way that I teach Spanish is the long term. We're in it for the long haul to actually use this language.
I love that. And they definitely don't want conversational Spanish, because I speak Spanish, but I don't speak it like structured, right? So I sound like I'm talking from the street, like in Mexico. So like a great example, and this is why you don't want what they want, is my best friend, she's Peruvian. And so anytime I visit her family, her mom roasts me all the time because I can speak Spanish, but I sound like an idiot too, because I'm probably not making sense in a sentence structure, but they can still understand what I'm saying. So they don't want conversational Spanish. They need to go the long route, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So the ALA series, we really focus on the present tense, just speaking in like the present tense and being able to communicate, because it's actually really difficult tense to work in. So we focus a lot on that. Some useful structures that you can use while speaking, lots of vocabulary to build your vocabulary.
Like making it more robust. That's something I struggle with really. Is I speak Spanish, but one is I need to get better at conjugating and structure. And then two is expanding my vocabulary. And that's really it. Like, so you'll see me in one of your classes soon.
Okay. I would love to have you. I think you would really enjoy it.
No, I am like, I love setting goals at the start of the year and forgetting about them, but like somehow by the end of the year, I'm doing it. Like the podcast is one of those examples. I wrote it down in January and I started it. But yeah, you'll see me in one of your classes because I am like dead set on teaching it to my offspring. Like, I don't want to bring a kid into the world and not be able to like teach them Spanish from day one, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I focus a lot in my courses on verbs because verbs are so important in Spanish. And if you don't know what a verb means and you're not able to conjugate it, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot form a sentence. You cannot communicate in a respectable way. So a lot of work that we do in my courses is just on using verbs because
Cool.
they're so important. And then you can be speaking from day one. You can be communicating from day one. We're not starting with like, oh, these are the days of the week and these are the colors. And like, we're going to count. And it's like 4 weeks in and all you've learned is vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. I start with verbs so that you're able to communicate from day one.
That's kind of smart if you think about it, because not only, like you said, they're starting to communicate from day one, but there's that application approach too. So you're blending theory and learning the books, but you're actually speaking too, because you're empowering people with the tools to say a sentence instead of like sábado. Like you can actually start to form
Say a sentence. Yeah, exactly. And also it just goes back to, this is what I did to learn. This is how I learned. This is how I've become fluent as an adult. If you would like to try that too, come join me and I'll show you.
The place you went to in Spain, is it pretty like reputable? Is it known? Like, do you float that around like, hi, I was trained at so and so, and then I also spent X amount of years here and here? That's like, I feel like that would also be a good marketing tool.
Yeah, I think my fluency speaks for itself, and my ability to explain difficult grammar topics in an easy way,
Mhm.
difficult topics in an easy way. I think that proves that my language learning was high quality.
Yeah.
But, I also believe that you can go to a foreign country, you can go as an expat to live in Mexico or Spain, and you can surround yourself with English speakers and never learn a word of Spanish. I mean, to never actually put the time into learning. I know lots of expats who live in Mexico that,
What are you
I'm
saying
sorry,
here?
expats, like people who get up to and just move to Mexico and decide to live there.
Oh, you're telling me those people will never learn?
No, and people who retire in Mexico, or even just people who go to work in Mexico and they're living there like full time as Americans. There are plenty of them who never take the time to correctly learn Spanish. And so I believe that you can create an immersive experience wherever you are. You do not have to be in a Spanish speaking country, especially nowadays with podcasts and all the resources that you have available to you. Um, you don't have to be in a foreign country to create that immersive experience. Equally, being in a foreign country doesn't mean you're magically going to learn the language either. You
Yeah.
also have to put time and effort into it. So I always fall back on, yes, I lived in these countries, but I worked my little tail off on the off hours, late nights, every day after school, listening to music, making an effort to make friends. I put in the effort to learn while living abroad.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a good point. That's actually a great point, because a lot of people, even myself, I just admitted it. Like, when I envision people moving somewhere to another country, I'm automatically assuming that they're learning something. And that's probably me just showing my implicit bias. But yeah, like, I thought people were learning these languages, and I guess not. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
no. And even back in 2011, 2012, I didn't have any of the fancy stuff we have now. I didn't have podcasts. I didn't have online courses. I didn't even have a smartphone at that time, on
Yeah.
purpose, just to be where I in the present moment where I was and just focus on this one thing for a year.
Yeah, can you
Uh,
imagine being on like the rocky remote beach, but you're actually just scrolling on Facebook the whole time? Like, I'm sure people do that.
yeah.
Like,
And I didn't have Google Translate. I didn't have any of those things when I was learning. And it worked out for the better because I actually had to retain things and internalize them.
how much does learning a new language um, require you to remove some of your ego? Like,
Mm.
you have to remind some people of this, like, hey, you need to check your ego when you walk through the door, because you're not going to be good at this immediately. And yeah, expect to put in some work.
Yeah, that's a great point. You really have to humble yourself when you learn a language because you will feel very dumb. You're gonna speak like you're a 3-year-old. Um, but I also try to preach to people it's about communication. It's not the most fancy sentence you can put together. We're just trying to
Yeah.
communicate here, but it's a very humbling experience. And I've been in incredibly embarrassing situations in Spanish.
Really?
Incredibly embarrassed. Yeah.
Would you like to share one if you're
What
up?
I can share one? Well, one of the classic ones, which I'm sure happens to everyone, is the word embarazada. Embarazada
Embarazada?
means pregnant in Spanish, but it sounds like embarrassed.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've told people like, ay, estoy muy embarazada. Oh, you're really pregnant? Okay. So that's one. Another one is when you say when you use caliente with estar, estoy caliente, it's kind of a sexual connotation. You want to say,
Calor.
tengo
Yeah.
calor, like I'm hot. Okay. So like I was in a salsa club, couple months into living in Spain, met some Spanish speaking friends, and it was hot. It was, summertime. And I said something like, estoy muy caliente. And everyone's like laughing at me because it's like sexual. They're like, oh, really, Dominique?
Yeah.
And that was the day I learned to say, tengo calor.
Tengo calor. Yeah, that's the thing.
So those classic ones. Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some practical tips for people to start going down this journey? And I say journey because it's not like in 2 weeks, it's, the magazines that say do this in 20 days. Like it is
Mm-hmm.
not like that. It's like a new lifestyle. So what are some practical tips you have?
Yeah, so there definitely has to be a mindset shift in the beginning. A lot of people have this kind of dreamy view of learning Spanish. They're just like, I'm going to learn Spanish. And then they don't realize the work that goes into it. So
It's
definitely
hard.
having it's a lot, it's hard. And so really checking yourself to remind yourself, why am I doing this? What are my goals? And not quite your goals, but what are your systems to get you there? What kind of systems are you going to build? And Atomic Habits talks about this a lot, James Clear, about don't worry about your goals so much as your systems. How
Yeah.
am I going to create a daily habit of Spanish to help me reach my end goal, right? So really checking yourself before you even start a program. And then make sure that whoever is running the program is the type of Spanish that you want to learn. Make sure, is it Castilian or is it Latin American Spanish?
Can you
Make
explain the difference for people? Because I do know that like one of my favorite things is Rosalia, the singer from Spain. She won a Grammy and it's such a beautiful video, but she's accepting it and she's like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then she starts speaking Spanish and then she starts speaking Castilian. So like, I find that incredible that she spoke 3 languages within like 30,
Mhm.
40 seconds. Can you describe the difference between those two?
Yeah. Okay. So when I say Castilian, when I say or Castellano, it's basically the Spanish spoken in Spain. So it's
Mhm.
Spanish. There's nothing different about it except that the accent and vocabulary. So it's not a different language. It's just the Spanish spoken in Spain is referred to as Castellano or Castilian Spanish. Just like you would say Argentinian Spanish, Mexican Spanish. It's just a way to
Girl.
describe, just to describe peninsular, like the Iberian Peninsula,
Mhm.
the Spanish spoken there.
And there's nuances to the language, and that's kind of
Mhm.
what differentiates these, right?
Yeah, there's regionalities, vocabulary, like how they structure verbs a little bit. There's a subject pronoun vosotros that's only
Oh yeah,
spoken
yeah,
in
yeah.
Spain. But then when you're in South America and Central America, they use vos instead of tú. So
Really?
vos is like another regionality. So there's just a lot of regionality to Spanish, and there's a big difference, it feels like, between Castilian Spanish and like a Mexican Spanish in terms of the vocabulary and things like
How
that.
how much of that is are people arrogant in Spain at times if you speak Mexican Spanish per se?
No, I don't think so. And vice versa too. I think we're becoming such a globalized world that,
Yeah.
you know, um, I think we're hearing all sorts of accents everywhere. I mean, even here in Austin, I'm very plugged into the Latino community, and there's a few meetup groups here for Spanish, and lots of Spaniards here. There's a lot of
Really?
Spanish people Spanish speakers from Spain living here right now, and all over Colombia, Guatemala, Mexico. So more and more, I think we're all getting used to hearing different accents.
And then in Spain, instead of like corazón, it would be corazón, right?
Corazón. So they're zeta, the Z is like a th, it's a TH sound.
That's why Enrique Iglesias, when he's singing, you hear like corazón all the time.
Corazón.
Yeah.
So you can imagine when I came back from a year in Spain, how funny I sounded in California, speaking a very Castilian Spanish. I was speaking like corazón. I was using vosotros, and I've since lost that because just spending more time in Latin America, and I've tried to make my Spanish as universal as possible.
Sure. It's funny is there's a show called Money Heist on Netflix, or La Casa del Papel. Yeah. And when I was watching it, I watched it so like uniformly all at once that even in my Spanish, I started like saying like it's just started to integrate into my Spanish more. So I was like very interested to see that and amused at how quickly like something like TV can start to impact how I was speaking already, which was really interesting to me.
Yeah, exactly. People say that the cadence of my Spanish, the cadence of it is very Castilian, but my vocabulary is Latin American. But even so, I don't speak much slang in Spanish. I don't speak much slang in English either. So I kind of speak the same. I do. I'm like really proper. I'm proper in both languages, and that's just how I speak.
I'm again, like 2022 is where I want, like, I'm already kind of thinking of what my 2022 is going to look like, but for sure it's full of Spanish. Like I want to become more integrated, and like, I love that you speak so proper because I want that in my Spanish. Yeah. I think that's just like very cool, like being able to speak proper Spanish, because I've grown up my whole life speaking slang Spanish and getting by, and I want to be exceptional at speaking Spanish. So
yeah, and it's actually not that hard. I mean, if you've got some knowledge under your belt, we just have to tweak a few things and we can get you there.
That's exciting. I wanted to speak to you about music and or TV. What are some favorites and or recommendations you have for people? Let's start with music first. What kind of artists do you like?
Yeah. So personally, I've already mentioned this, but salsa is my jam. I love salsa music. So Mark Anthony, I always say he was my first love, and he taught me so many things. He taught me so much about Spanish in his songs. But for people that maybe like just like singer songwriter stuff, Julieta Venegas is a great.
Love her.
She's very easy to understand. She has a very clear accent, and her lyrics are very simple.
What does she sing? Eres para mí.
Yeah. And she says, "Si quieres andar conmigo." Yeah, that song. So her songs are really simple to listen to. I also like Jesse and Joy. Their songs are also very easy to listen to. Reggaeton, I wouldn't learn my Spanish from reggaeton music.
It's a little too fast paced, and or like with the beats, it's hard to hear distinctly what the words are being said.
Exactly.
Do you like Mon Laferte?
Yes, I do.
I love her.
She can be a little hard to understand for learners though. So yeah. I also love Mana, but their lyrics are out. Their lyrics are out of this world. I mean, they're beautiful, but it's advanced Spanish. So I also don't recommend that unless you have a higher level.
I love that. Vivir Sin Aire is like my favorite. It's also like a specific version. It's they're in California Live, like 99 or something. They have an album, and that's like my favorite song of all time by them. And I saw them a couple years ago in Dallas, and I bought 2 shirts. Yeah, I saw them. Like,
that's so great. Yeah, I've seen them too. I forgot. I think I was in Sacramento when I saw them.
Really?
But Fonseca is another one. Fonseca, his music is, again, for learning purposes, to actually understand what you're hearing. Carlos Vives has really happy music
It's
as
nice.
well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's good music you can dance to. It's like pretty upbeat
Yeah.
and it's like kind of just emanating throughout my body, like when I hear music like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about some like TV that you enjoy?
Yeah. So obviously with the Castilian Spanish, there are some great shows out there like Casa de Papel. And then I also like one called El Tiempo Entre Costuras, The Time in Between. It was a series. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. I'm not actually sure where you can get it, but it's beautiful. It comes with a book and there's a book you can read along with it.
Wow.
Beautiful. But on the Mexican Spanish side or Latin American side, I really love Ingobernable. It's set in Mexico City. It's present time, high action packed. It means ungovernable. So it's high action packed series. Also Monarca. Monarca is another one that takes place in Mexico with a family that owns a tequila empire in Mexico. Also high energy.
I'm writing this one down. I'm a sucker for those
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah. Ingobernable is really good too. Ungovernable, it's called.
Do you like La Reina del Sur?
Yeah. Yeah. I like La Reina del Sur. Uh-huh. Also very good.
Kate del Castillo is great. I love her.
She is. Yeah. So Kate del Castillo is also in Ingobernable as well.
Oh, really?
She's the same actress. Mhm. Yeah. So those are and then obviously like Narcos, if you want
Did
to
you
go
just
down.
watch that latest season by chance?
I haven't,
I
but
finished it. I finished it embarrassingly quick.
oh, really?
Yeah, it was a great, exceptional season.
Yeah. But those are my recommendations for movies and what was the other thing we talked about?
Like music and all that.
Music. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned book. That one of those series came with a book, and I noticed that in one, it looks like one of your classes or groups for people, you had kind of like a book club. Is this right?
Yeah. So I've run a couple book clubs, and the
You run
last
book
one
clubs too?
I run book clubs too for intermediate/advanced. So you need to have a good high reading level, and you should be able to speak in most tenses with some kind of
Yeah.
fluency. So it's definitely for a higher intermediate student. But yeah, we just finished a novel this last or during this past fall. We finished a novel together. It was a 400-page book. I'm really
And
proud
that's a
of them.
commitment.
It was a commitment. I'm probably going to go a bit lighter with the book choice for February. I'm going to start the next book club in February. And I give you reading assignments. I call it educational because we talk about grammar and vocabulary
Very cool.
during it. We have group sessions every 2 weeks to discuss the book, and we're pretty serious about it. It's not just like a light book club. We're really there to learn.
I like that because if I'm reading a book and I'm talking to people about what really resonates with me, I want to know what part of the sentence structure and or word usage makes my heart feel a certain way when I'm reading. And so if I can analyze that with other people, I think that's kind of powerful.
Yeah. And I pre-select conversation questions so people can prepare their thoughts beforehand. So it's very structured.
Cool. I wanted to ask, with Alas and the book club, what do you have like more intermediate and advanced courses for people that aren't just like the book course?
Yeah. So right now, I have designed a mini preterite tense course, which is something you just really need to know well in Spanish is the preterite tense. And so I've designed a 4-week mini course, a self-paced course for that. I haven't got it running on my site yet. I just kind of piloted it the last couple months, but it should be there by January, February. And then I actually, right now, I'm working one-on-one with intermediate and advanced students. So I have what are called 2 programs. One is called my grammar track programs. Grammar tracks are where you and I do one-to-one lessons, 8 sessions together, and we pick a certain topic that you struggle with the most. So it could be pronouns, it could be past tenses, or the dreaded subjunctive, which the subjunctive is a whole nother animal, more for advanced level students. I'll work one-on-one. And then I also have what's called my speaking program. And it's kind of a speaking and a writing program that you and I do one-on-one I choose topics. You write about the topics. I edit your writing for you. We find holes in your Spanish. I have you do recordings of yourself and send me recordings via WhatsApp so I can analyze your pronunciation and give you some tips on that. So that's a 4-week one-to-one session program that I
so
offer.
Fun.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so cool. Because like my personal reasons I want to learn Spanish is obviously even connecting more with my family on like another level. And then also professionally, like I don't feel comfortable yet adding Spanish to my resume because I wouldn't be able to have a business discussion and do certain things in Spanish. And yeah, so what would you recommend for someone like me that knows how to speak Spanish, but like I do know that for a fact, like I can read, I can write, but my structure and grammar, like sentence structure is not there. So would you recommend the Alas one, or what would you recommend?
So I would have to take a look at your writing. I would send you some writing prompts and tell you not to use a Google Translator, just write your responses. And from your writing, I can figure out what you need.
That's exciting.
Yeah, but most people who aren't able to conjugate verbs correctly in the present tense are going to start in alas uno.
And again, I think that's like, I'm so open to that, but it's like me naturally kind of just moving my ego to the side, but that's like a skill I've developed over time. So if you're trying to learn a new language, expect to be humbled rather quick. So you might as well like be aware of that and be ready for it.
Yeah. And start back at the basics. And I promise you there's going to be stuff that you don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I've done a lot of research in my past, and something that always keeps me going is how much I don't know. Like I have a very healthy relationship with that. And I love that I don't know everything, and I don't ever want to be at that place where I know everything, because I don't think that's realistic. And that also might show that I've stopped growing in a certain sense. So
yeah. And I still consider myself a lifelong learner of Spanish. I may be a teacher, but I am a lifelong learner. And even in January, I'm taking a month to go to Mérida, to the Yucatan, just for me, just to immerse myself back into Mexico. And I might even get a conversation partner. I might even get a local teacher just to push me a little bit, because I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to ask you if you had your own podcast, which you strike me as someone that might start a podcast in the future one day.
I might. I'm deciding between the podcast or the YouTube channel.
Oh man, that would be fun. If you had your own podcast, what would be your top 2 favorite companies that reached out to you and said, Dominique, we love what you're doing, we want to sponsor you and your work? What would those companies be?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. I would say Teachable. Teachable is a platform that it's what I run my courses on, and they really support online teachers and giving their gifts to the world, offering their gifts to the world via courses and things like that. So if Teachable were to sponsor me, I thought that would be really cool. And then maybe italki. Italki is a platform that connects teachers with students.
Very cool.
To learn different languages across the world.
That's cool.
So yeah, I think maybe those two.
Those two. And then my last question of the day is, what inspires you, whether it's something that you get to do with your students and your clients, or it's something you observe in the community?
What inspires me is to see beautiful connections between people, connections that they might not have otherwise had if they hadn't have met me or taken lessons with me, or just the beautiful blending of cultures through language is inspiring. Yeah,
I love that. And there's a beautiful quote that I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's like, to know 2 languages, it's to have 2 souls. Like,
that's right.
And I wholeheartedly agree. Like,
I do too.
It hits different. So thank you for coming on today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Definitely we'll keep in contact, because again, I'll probably be in one of your courses, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah. I'm going to push you. I'm going to ask you about that.
Okay. And thank you to all the listeners for listening in on another episode. We'll see you on the other side.